All right, let's jump right in. So, when a European company decides to tackle the massive US market, there's a standard playbook, right? It's slow, it's steady, it's organic growth, kind of the safe route. But what if you don't have that kind of patience? What if you want to hit the ground running now? Well, that's what we're talking about today, the alternative, the high speed, high stakes fast track.
And really, that's the whole idea in a nutshell. Look, that classic step-by-step approach, something like 80% of companies follow it, and for good reason. It's just lower risk. But for the risk takers, for the ones who are aiming for a massive, immediate impact, yeah, there are definitely other much more aggressive ways to go.
So, this is really the choice it boils down to. You've got the slow, organic build on one hand and the fast track acquisition on the other. It's a classic trade off, isn't it? Are you going to prioritize safety and patience, or are you willing to take on way more risk to get an immediate platform and just explosive growth?
But that begs the question, right? What makes this riskier path so tempting? I mean, why would any company intentionally choose a strategy that's loaded with potential pitfalls? Let's get into the real reasons, the big motivations for skipping that slow and steady road.
What's fascinating is the mindset behind this decision. This is for the go-getters, the companies that want to scale their revenue and they want to do it now. They're looking for an instant, ready-to-go platform in the US. And this approach, it lets them totally sidestep all the painful, burdensome parts of starting from square one. Building a brand, finding a team, getting customers, all that from scratch. And here's a fantastic example of one of those burdensome things. The US labor market, it's just a different beast. It's totally normal for American workers to jump from job to job. So what does that mean for you? It means trying to attract, hire, and train a solid team can take a ton of time and money. So what's the shortcut? You just buy a company that already has that great team in place.
This is such a great example of how powerful this fast track can be, especially in a niche market. Just imagine for a second, you're a pharmaceutical company. You could literally spend years just navigating all the red tape, local, state, federal regulations, building facilities that are FDA compliant, training staff, or you could do what this German company did. They just bought an established facility and skipped that entire nightmarish process in one single move. Brilliant.
But of course, all that speed comes with some pretty serious risks. So let's look at our first cautionary tale, an acquisition that was this close to going horribly, horribly wrong. And as these things often do, it all started with a deal that just seemed way too good to be true. $1 million. That was the number on the table. A European company was literally moments away from signing the contract to buy a US company for almost $1 million. And on paper, it looked amazing. The building alone seemed to be worth the price. They were so ready to pull the trigger. And get this, their whole strategy for checking things out was basically just to pray that nothing was wrong. I know, it sounds unbelievable, but this kind of thing happens a lot when people get too eager. They were just so blinded by how good the deal looked that they figured they'd just hope for the best. $1 million bet on a prayer. Wow. Luckily, they were convinced to just hit pause, to invest a tiny fraction of that $1 million into some proper, targeted due diligence. And the results? They were immediate, and they were bad. The investment was a total non-starter. So that little bit of research, it didn't just stop a bad deal. It saved them from making a truly catastrophic $1 million mistake. And here is the absolute key. What might look like a simple purchase can actually be a complete minefield of hidden liabilities, especially in the US legal system. The rules are just different. The risks are so much higher. The big takeaway here is this. When you're looking at the US market, you have to assume every single deal has a major flaw hiding somewhere until you can prove, without a doubt, that it doesn't.
Okay, so that's acquisitions. What about another fast-track option? The joint venture. I mean, on the surface, it sounds great, right? Share the risk, share the load. But there is one tiny detail in that contract that can literally make or break the entire thing. And it all comes down to the split of control.
And really, this says it all. A 50-50 partnership. It sounds so fair, so equal. But in the real world, it's usually just a recipe for total gridlock. A disaster waiting to happen. Why? Well, think about it. When a really tough call has to be made, who gets the final say? Nobody. But that one single extra percentage point, owning 51%, that gives you the ultimate power to decide. It takes a partnership from being a problem to being decisive. And here's how that downward spiral plays out in reality. We had a German client. They go into a 50-50 partnership. They trusted their American partner, so they handed over all the day-to-day operations. And the result? The U.S. partner drove the business straight into the ground. And the worst part? Because of that 50-50 split, the German company was completely powerless to step in and stop it. It kicked off a legal nightmare that went on for years.
Now, the really wild part about this story is that this wasn't some deal with a stranger they just met. Nope, these two companies had a really strong, close, trusting relationship that went way back. Everything pointed to success. And it just proves a crucial point. Even the best relationships in the world can't save you from a badly structured deal. Goodwill is absolutely no substitute for having control.
And that is such a painful lesson to learn. That one little percentage point, if they just negotiated for it at the very beginning, could have stopped this whole mess before it even started. It would have given them the power to step in, to fix things, and would have saved them an unbelievable amount of money, time, and just stress.
So we've seen how these fast-track strategies can go spectacularly wrong. So how do you chase the big rewards while dodging all those risks? Well, the answer is actually simple in theory, but it takes a lot of discipline to pull off. It all comes down to one thing: due diligence. And let's be super clear about what that really means. Due diligence is not just some boring box-ticking exercise. No, it's the intense, heavy lifting you do up front to analyze a company inside and out before you ever sign a contract. It's about making absolutely sure that this huge move actually fits with your business plan, not just crossing your fingers and hoping it does.
And here's what a really solid process looks like. First, you find a target. Then, you put together your core four. That's your essential team of experts in legal, tax, business operations, and logistics. This team does a super deep 360-degree analysis. And here's the key: they don't just write their own reports in a silo. They actually review each other's work to catch any blind spots before you take another step.
And that brings us to the final and most critical point. If you don't do this disciplined work up front, that whole risk-reward balance just flips on its head. The potential for disaster, we're talking legal nightmares, huge financial losses, wasted years, it all starts to completely outweigh the benefit of being fast. The fast track only works if you pave the road with solid research first. So, we'll end with this question for you. The appeal of instant growth, of having a ready-made platform in the US, it's incredibly powerful. There's no doubt the fast track offers huge rewards. But as we've seen, it's a path that's just littered with hidden dangers. So the real question you got to ask yourself isn't whether you want that reward. It's whether your homework, your preparation, is good enough to handle the risk.